Hey everyone, BT here. Come inside as David and I talk about the essentials to living an abundant life. This is really heavy into The Science of Getting Rich by Wattles, and there's some really great moments in here where David pinpoints some things in my life that I thought I had figured out, but in actuality, I wasn't even close, and I'm better off because of it. You're going to learn a lot from the ass kicking I took, so come inside and check this out. Hey everyone, BT, and welcome to Inside the Episode. Today, David and I are going inside the episode titled Essentials of an Abundant Life. Man, the titles are killing me today. I love this one because it's essential. It's essential and abundant in one sentence.
It is.
And life will never be the same. You know that, people. All right, so this episode, probably the most mentioned book throughout the years of doing this podcast and sitting across from you, has to be The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace.
Yeah.
And that's what this episode is basically pulling from. And I love how you talked about sitting down and reading that book for the first time and how emotional of an experience it was for you. Because, you know, a lot of times we don't remember like where we were, what we were doing when we first got a book. And you were able to do that so clearly. You talked about the room you were sitting in, the couch you were sitting on. And you had this huge breakthrough that day, and you directly credited it to Wallace's words.
Yeah.
So what is it about The Science of Getting Rich that unlocked so much potential in you back in the day?
So when I was a little kid, and I mean a little kid, probably between 5 and 7, I would say, my grandmother would take me to church on the weekends. I was Catholic, so I had to do the catechism classes because you have to do all the, you know, all the different things. And I'm hearing that we come from this loving God, right? So you're hearing all the religious stuff. In my experience at home, it was very, very different, right? So not only was I was born in 1966. So even though I didn't directly experience like Bobby Kennedy being killed and Martin Luther King, you heard about it as you were growing up because this was all really new information, you know, at the time. The Vietnam War was very relevant, and all the stuff that was going on with that. And then my family had a horrific tragedy in 1970 where my uncle and my 2 cousins died in a house fire. It screwed up my family like to no end. So I'm witnessing this, and I'm thinking this is very different than what I'm learning in church. Why? And I'm also seeing that the world is very much different than what I'm learning in church. And I'm like, so if God is this loving God and he created all of his children out of love and there's all this love stuff and peace and all this stuff, what the hell's wrong with people? Like, where are we getting this wrong? So nobody would answer this question for me. And I actually, Brandon, would get disciplined for asking this question. They're like, I'm causing trouble. And I wasn't. I was just an extremely curious child, probably too curious for, their comfort, but I was. That's who I was. So I started thinking to myself, okay, well, maybe we don't come from a loving God. Is that possible, right? Or is it true we come from a loving God, but there's something that people don't understand about this love or religion or whatever? Anyway, nobody can answer the question, so I kind of took that question and put it in my back pocket. It was there in the back of my mind, and I went on about my life. As I'm experiencing life, and my parents get divorced, and my grandparents die, and there's drama here and drama there, and I'm not making good decisions, and I start to move up through all of the well-known problems that I've talked about on the podcast and, different seminars and stuff. I have this experience where I triple my income and I'm like, okay, I need to learn something. This is pointing a direction for me. So I'm out there and I'm learning. This question, though, is still in the back of my mind, right? Like there's something we don't understand. Well, as I'm learning and experiencing things, I'm getting this sense more and more that there really is a different side to all of this. And all I could tell you, the best way I can explain it, it was just a feeling that I had inside of me that the way we experience life was kind of backwards. Like I really did think there was an abundance, but I never wanted to say anything about it because it didn't jive with what everybody else thought, right? Anyway, long story short, I'm introduced to this book for about 2-year period of time. I know about the book. I'm diligently searching for different material. I thought the book was about economics. So I didn't even pick it up and look at it, right? People will be like, have you read The Science of Getting Rich yet? No, I'm not interested in how you save money and where do you invest it. And that's what I thought the book was. So 2 years into this exploratory thing, one day I pick up the book and I'm like, oh, this isn't what that's about. This is about kind of what I'm looking for. So I take it home and I sit down, and as I start to read it, the way Wattles wrote that book, it was like cha-ching, 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 all the pieces in my mind that were there but confused and I didn't know what place to put them in to make it work. It was like everything lined up that afternoon in my mind, and all of a sudden I saw how the universe worked. And it brought me to tears, because what I thought from when I was a little kid, even though I couldn't put it into the correct language or even the correct questions, I found out it was true, and that it just all fell into place. And it was extremely emotional. It was like I was realizing something that I always knew, but I didn't know. You know what I mean? Like it was in me, but I wasn't conscious of it. And I felt like a part of me woke up that was dormant or something. So that's about the best way that I can explain it. But it was very emotional. I cried on that couch that afternoon.
Well, and it makes sense that you remember exactly where you were the first time you cracked it and got into it wholly, because it did leave such an impressionable, feeling in yourself.
It did.
And there's so much to unpack in that. I've still got this visual of a 5-year-old mini Nagel running around the church just wreaking havoc, asking questions of adults that they did not want to answer. But how amazing is it that even then you were that astute? Like, there's not a lot of 5 to 7-year-olds that are walking around wondering, if there's a loving God, then why is this happening over here?
Right.
Like, you don't ask a lot of those questions, and that's why they probably didn't answer it. But to your credit, you didn't let it stop you.
And they didn't know how to answer it. I found that out later on, because they would say, well, the mysteries of the Bible, or there's certain things that we're not supposed to know as human beings because that's why we have to have faith. And I was not buying it. I'm like, this does not make any sense to me, right? Why would so many people suffer? And then you're going to school and you're learning history and you're hearing about the Holocaust and the Jews and Pol Pot and all these different horrific things that have happened throughout history. And you're thinking to yourself, no, there's something that is wrong here. There is something wrong. And I really wanted to know what it was.
Yeah. And I love that you thought The Science of Getting Rich was an economics book, and you just were like, nope, not going to do that.
Yeah,
because think about how many people
don't shame me. I did.
Yeah, don't judge a book by its cover, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't know. I mean, it sounds like, oh, first of all, I read the word science. I'm not going there. It's probably going to teach me chemistry or some shit, and I don't want any part of that. But truthfully, you unlocked, the secrets within that book, and then you've taught it to so many other people. I mean, The Science of Getting Rich is a huge part of your repertoire, and we're all better because of it.
Well, it was the primary seminar that I taught for the first 4 years that I was in business. I mean, now it's an Art of Success, but then it was The Science of Getting Rich, and I did it. I can't tell you how many times a year.
Yeah,
I would teach it.
And you know it inside and out,
Yeah.
which I think is interesting. When you talk about studying that book, you spotlight 3 chapters in particular: chapter 4, 14, and 7. And I hope I have these correct. Chapter 4, the first principle in The Science of Getting Rich. Chapter 14, the impression of increase.
Right.
And then chapter 7, gratitude. And you would study them in that order.
Right.
We're so used to reading books, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. You were learning at 4, 14, and 7. Can you talk about why that order is so important when you're diving into that book?
Well, the idea is that you go through it the normal way first, right? And ideally you go to the seminar, although there's not too many people that teach that seminar the correct way. I know that I do. I know that Proctor does. I learned it from him. And the order, by the way, came from Bob. I didn't create that. Proctor did. And he gave it as a study guide. When we were done with the seminar, he'd be like, okay, so take the little green book, because we used to have this big, huge binder for the seminar, with the 3 rings.
Sure,
and all that.
yeah, thick.
Well, you also got the little book, the little green book that was The Science of Getting Rich, which was just the literature. And he would like every day study these 3 chapters, like just read through these 3. It's the essence of the entire book in these 3 chapters. So you burn it into your consciousness by doing that. It was the first principle, right? The impression of increase, how you need to show up, and great gratitude is what keeps you connected to your source of supply.
Yeah, and you can get access to that book right now and start right after listening to this show, going in and diving in. I mean, read it cover to cover first. I like that idea because then you get a baseline with which to work. But then you make it a daily study to read 4, 14, and 7. And they're not gigantic chapters.
No.
I mean, you can easily get through them, but feel those emotions as you're going through it, and you'll unlock some serious mysteries in your life for sure.
I think he wrote, to my understanding, Wattles was a farmer. And the other thing people don't know about that book is it's a trilogy. It's not just one book. There's the science of being great and the science of being healthy, I think, are the other 2. But that's really the book, the science of being rich. But he struggled with those questions all of his life. And then something happened where it all came into alignment for him, and he wrote this book. And if you read the book, if you really study it, and if you also study it knowing the 7 laws of the universe, you realize the book is really based on the cause and effect of everything. And he breaks everything down from the idea of wanting to get rich to actually pocketing money in your life. What is the psychological process from cause and effect in order for that to happen? And how does it actually work out? And then what do we do every day, to make that happen? So what I found was that as I was reading it, all of the superstition and all of the false things that I had learned just all fell away. And the only thing that was left was the truth. And it was simple, it was easy to understand, and it was something a person could follow.
Powerful. Well, and just to do an on-the-fly fact check here, science of getting rich, science of being great, and the science of being well. So healthy.
Being well,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So those are the classic trilogy. You can do a search on that, and you can find all sorts of information about it for sure. Well, I love it in the episode when you talk about money, and you talk about money in general, that it's just an idea. It has no value other than the value we've assigned to it. I mean, for the most part, it's just paper with pretty pictures on it of dead presidents. So the more we begin to understand the idea around money and what it is, the more we break down the suspicion and superstition around it. That's what you said in the episode. And that's a powerful exercise in awareness if you have fear around money, which, I've had money fears most of my life. That was a pattern that was passed along for me from my parents. What do you advise people who are constantly worrying that there won't be enough in order to shift that pattern? Like that fear of money is so strong that they're always worried about lack. They're living in lack, and they want to believe abundance, but they just don't see it showing up in their life. Well,
here's part of the problem. How are they raised in respect to, cause and effect of money coming into their life? Because if your parents worked for somebody else, it's not that it's a bad thing, but just think about this. Your parents work for somebody else. They have a skill set. They go to work every day to give this skill set, and then their employer gives them a check at the end of the week. A big part of it is also staying in the good graces of that employer so you don't lose your job, right? So that check that a person is getting every single week for the entire time that they're working for this person is very volatile. It's based on a lot of different things. If I don't do that job right, I don't get a check. If I lose good graces with the boss, I don't get a check. If somebody comes in who's better, will do it cheaper, I don't get a check. There's so many things that we hear about this, and the underlying idea is I'm not in control of the money coming in. Somebody else could take this away from me at any moment in time. So we're not learning from a cause and effect perspective of how do we actually manifest money in our life. That's the first thing to understand. The second thing to understand is there is an actual way, based on cause and effect, to learn how to bring money into your life regardless of what anybody else thinks of you. And when you learn that practice, you're no longer locked into the idea that there's not enough. Because the idea that there's not enough is really rooted in somebody else is in control of the money that I'm making, right? As long as that's true, then yes, you are in a very vulnerable position. But when that's no longer true for you because you've learned something different and you're in control of those decisions and how it happens, you're not susceptible to somebody else making a decision that says you can't make it earn money or earn as much as you want anymore.
Yeah, it becomes almost limitless when you are able to work for yourself. I mean, we have people come to your seminars all the time who are in a job transitioning into their own private practice of some sorts.
Right.
And they then go from being dependent on their skill set and the boss and all these other external factors into now I control how much I make or how little I make. Great part about it is the income is limitless. The bad part is you better be making sales every day or you're going to be out of business real quick.
Yeah, and what the other thing that carries over is how much people like them or approve of them. They're worried about, will my team like me or approve of me? Will a customer like me or approve of me? Will my competition like me? Like, there's this, it's so crazy, this idea that somebody else has to approve of you in order for you to feel safe, secure, and actually have money in your life. And there's nothing further from the truth. I mean, it's not true.
Right.
It's just true in a rigged system, where somebody else literally controls the money and they control how much you receive. Then it's true. But overall in the universe, it's not true.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned in the episode that everybody's a powerful manifester. And the problem is we manifest what we're in harmony with. So if you want to manifest something different, you have to change what you're in harmony with. So if your results aren't where you're at right now and you continue to manifest these things you don't want, you got to check your harmony level and where you're at. So if we're talking broad strokes here, what does that look like when we're trying to figure out what we're in harmony with? I mean, I know that it's specific to each person's experience, but what does that look like when we just talk broad strokes about being in harmony with that thing we want to manifest?
Well, I think it's both belief-based and value-based. So if I'm in harmony, so let's look at it like this. If I'm not making the amount of money that I want to earn in life, not only am I not in harmony with the abundance of money, but I'm in harmony with whatever I think keeps me safe in life. And whatever keeps me safe in life is how I view it and what I know to do with it or what I don't know to do with it. So if I want to change that, I may have to change literally the values and how I see something to something that I may have been taught is dangerous, right? So entrepreneurs take risks that don't feel like risks because they know how to adapt to change. If something doesn't work, they do something else. Based on cause and effect, something's going to bring that money in. To somebody that doesn't know that, that's just the craziest risk in their mind. So they're in harmony with safety. So there's an education that has to take place here in order for you to switch from an internal value perspective of what keeps me safe and certain in life to what's going to bring me abundance so that I can feel like I can switch over to abundant thinking. Otherwise, it feels insane and in many cases irresponsible to actually do so. It's not, it is a decision, but it's a decision based on some kind of education and what you actually know. So there's an educated process that goes along with it.
Yeah, and that's really strong in my background. And
well, mine too.
Yeah,
mine too.
Something that I deal with. I mean, I still deal with it to this day. It's almost interesting to say it out loud is that even though we have tremendous amount of things that we've manifested in our life and money and putting kids through school and we have a nice place to live and beautiful cars, there's always that unworthy piece that we'll talk about here in a little bit that I want to mention, but it's just really interesting to see how it comes up and how the fear, no matter how unfounded it is, I've always gotten what I needed when I needed it. Always. I've never had to go without. And I don't say that to be a brag or anything. It just shows up. I believe in the laws of the universe, but there's also those moments where I get, because of my background, I get fearful that it's never going to be enough. I'm never going to have enough. I'm never going to be enough and all these other sorts of things. So to hear you talk about it so beautifully and realize that, if you're in harmony with the laws of the universe and you understand cause and effect, you understand polarity, you understand that it's here and here now, it's a valuable lesson.
See, but I don't think that that's what's going on with you. I don't think it's about enough.
No.
I think it's about, did I do something wrong? Because that was your big lesson as a child, right?
It's true.
You couldn't do something wrong or you were severely punished for it.
Yeah.
So as I know you, there are certain things that you would rather have Steph be responsible for so that if it goes wrong, she can be responsible for it. You don't have to live in that fear. So I don't think, because I see you, a person that doesn't think they're enough does not do the things that you do, right?
Sure.
You've traveled all over the world with me. You do all upper end stuff with us. You enjoy it. You have fun. You're great to be around. You're an educated man. You continually learn. You have great responsibility inside the company. That's not a person that doesn't feel that they're worthy. Okay. You have a fear that you're going to do something wrong, and that little 6-year-old Brandon is going to get the shit knocked out of him again because they did something wrong.
Yeah.
That's what's going on with you.
Shit, yeah, it is. Ding, ding, ding. That's right. You nailed it. All right, that's a walk-off, folks. We got it. No, yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I guess I never really thought about that, but you're right. It's a perfectionist quality, and it's easier to make some, because I still defer to Steph for most things when it comes to finances, because, it's easier for me to be like, well, yeah, that was her that made that risk. She took that risk. I didn't, even though we have a 50-50 say in everything we do.
Right.
So, God
right.
damn.
And there's another thing. I don't think everybody's purpose is to be an entrepreneur, so to speak. You're very, very good at the things that you do. You have got an extreme gift for those things that you actually do with us. And I think that you're happy doing those things, right? It's a place that you excel. You get recognition for it. You know what you're doing. Everybody's good at something. So this is what I was taught anyway. Let's say you're good at something that doesn't necessarily bring money in. You either find somebody that can show you how to do it so it can be done on the side, or you find somebody else to do it for you, right? The idea is that you're not ignorant to the process, which you're not. Right. You've been around it for 10, 12, 14 years.
Right.
You're not ignorant to the process at all. You know exactly how it works and what has to be done. And you live in your skill set and where you shine.
Yeah. I hear that. Thank you. I think that's great. This is totally getting me. This is one I'm going to bookmark for my own library, because I'm hearing things, and you've said this to me multiple times. This isn't the first time we've had this conversation, but I think it's powerful, because I know there's people out there who probably feel the same way I do, maybe the same background, same upbringing. They can get a lot from what you just said. So I appreciate all that you just said. That was great.
You're welcome.
So another thing you said that I thought was great in the episode is you don't have a soul, you are a soul. And that soul gets its direction from desire that lives within you. So let's talk about desire for a brief moment here. You said that desire is the first energetic wave of consciousness that comes into the intellect, which, wow, I mean, that is a beautiful sentence in itself. So desire is the first energetic wave of consciousness that comes into the intellect. Can you explain that again? Since when I heard it and reread it multiple times, I just thought it was so powerful.
So what it really is it is God communicating to us what our purpose is and what direction we should go in. We experience it as desire, but that's what it is. It's no different than instinct in a squirrel that tells it exactly when to start storing nuts and build a nest and mate with another squirrel. Like, everything has some kind of a higher intelligence that tells it what its life purpose is and what it's supposed to do. We biologically have that the same as any other animal does. But from an intellectual and a spiritual being, a soul being, as I said, and you repeated that I said, desire is how we receive that higher purpose. Except so many people have made it wrong for so long so that they could manipulate people. They took that out of the picture. But people are starting to wake up to the fact that that's actually true. Now, I'm not talking about just casually wanting something. I'm talking about a burning desire where you seriously have a desire to be, do, or have something. That is God speaking with and through you, or the universe speaking with and through you to point you in the direction of what you're supposed to do and who you're supposed to become and what your purpose is in life.
Is that in line with intuition and gut feeling? Is that desire, or is that could be
no? It's different.
Different.
It's different. That we have this sixth sense in us that is directly tied to our nervous system, where we can pick up information, both positive and negative, things that would maybe possibly keep us safe or give us some kind of higher consciousness about something that we may not be completely aware of. That's what intuition is. And we can get better at it by listening to it and trying to understand it and separate it from just normal emotion, right? But that's not what desire is. And desires can change, correct? It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. Like if you have a desire right now and then 3 months down the road it starts to flicker out, you don't have to continue to ride that desire train thinking I'm going to force this. If it can flame out, right? See, I think that if it's a true desire, then it only flames out, if you will, once you've accomplished what that desire is. And then you go on to the next one, right? I believe in very rare instances somebody will download the whole thing at one time. I have heard of it. I have heard people say that they knew since they were 4 years old that this is what their life was going to be. I totally believe them. But for the average individual, it comes in waves. It says, go do this, go buy that, go start this, go experience this. And then when you do that, it opens up something else and you're able to receive more. And then you go on to the next and the next and the next and the next. That's how most people experience it.
Yeah, it's like a cross-country road trip. You got to go through this town to get to the next town to get to this town to go from coast to coast.
Exactly.
And it comes in waves. I love that. Well, there's this one sentence that you mentioned that you studied for 6 months, and you said it'll change everything if you just study it. And this was Wattles' words here. The basis of all human advancement must be the science of getting rich. What was it about that lit a fire under you to make the quantum leaps you did back in your day?
Because basically what it explains is that there is a need for things in our life at certain times for us to go to the next level of whatever it might be. Money is one of those things. If we don't have money, we can't have food, shelter, clothes, education. In order to experience life at the level that we currently are living in, the social evolution of it, we have to have money to do that. So in order for anything to advance forward, there has to be plenty of money for that advancement to actually take place. And if you look at anywhere in the world that is like third world country or an underdeveloped nation, you find that all of that is restricted. It's retarded. It's kept to a minimum. People are not experiencing that, and they're not experiencing it because they don't have the resources to get the education and the experience to be able to then expand that experience in their life.
Right. Yeah, Wattles talks in depth in the book about the right to be rich. And you've actually had a podcast before, was titled, You Have a Right to Be Rich, So Why Aren't You? And I'll link to that in the show notes below. And that's so important that we know that we have a right. You have a divine right to be rich. In order to do that, it's not just money riches either. There's varying forms of riches. There's riches in intellect. There's richness in the heart, richness in how you process and the way you think.
Right.
So how do we reprogram our mindsets when it seems like so many people have been conditioned to just have enough? You know, even saying the word rich, and especially in today's culture, it's very interesting. There's a lot of wealth shaming that goes along, and everybody should get the same amount. And we don't necessarily prescribe to that argument here on this show, but why is it that so many people are conditioned to have just enough?
Because they made it a value. It was kings or dictators and religious institutions made it a value so that they could control the masses. They said you're closer to God if you take away all the bullshit and you're just living basically hand to mouth. That's the way to actually do it. While they were living in unbelievable abundance and extravagance, everybody else should live this way because that's the only way that you could actually be close to God. So they made it a value, and it was passed on from one generation to another, and it doesn't change until somebody calls bullshit on it, and they realize that there is a different way of doing it. You go to any ghetto in the world, you go to any poverty-stricken place, you see people that are starving in the streets, you see crime, you see, just the nasty of the nasty. That's not closer to God. That there's no correlation there that makes any sense whatsoever, right? And actually, the idea is that, well, you said rich, it could be rich of anything. If we have an abundance of the things that we need and the responsibility and the common sense to use it in the correct way, we can direct it to advance very specific areas of our life and help other people advance their life. But there is a responsible way to do it. It's not just like, here, take all the money that you can and, go get high all day and, lay on the beach. And it's not that kind of wealth. It is the wealth where there's a purpose to it. It's to make my life better. It's to make your life better. We can make things better, but because we direct it in a way that makes things better.
Fantastic. Well, I'll circle back to this, even though I really don't want to in a way, because it's going to talk about core wounds just to kind of close out this episode. And you talked about two main core wounds that most people have. And I mentioned one of them being, unworthy a little bit ago, and then unlovable. Can you explain why so many people have these two main core wounds?
In short, to make it easy to understand, when a child experiences over and over again the things that they want and desire in life, and the response is shame and guilt from the parents around them, they're going to grow up not feeling worthy of the things that they want, because they're being made wrong for either their desires or the way that they want to express themselves in their life. And then the one that goes along with it, which is unlovable, is they're rejected for who they are. And that happens not just from parents, but kids get that in the schoolyard, right? So if there's no reinforcement and correct teaching in a child's life, they're going to be very vulnerable in those two areas. Now, it may not be your fault that happened, but once you become aware of it, it's your responsibility to change it.
Yeah, and those feed right into the science of getting rich. They feed right into that shame and guilt that you're living with right now. You don't have to be living with it. You address it, and it unlocks so many opportunities for you, and you will realize that there's a science to getting
yes,
to being
and
rich.
because we actually deserve, it's our divine right to be loved, to be worthy, to do something productive with our life, to help other individuals, to create wealth, to spread wealth, to create education, to spread education, to treat people well. That's rich. It's not just the cash. The cash is nice. It's great. You need it, but it's rich everywhere. If you're rich in one area and broke everywhere else in your life, you're not rich.
It's true. Well, I will say I appreciate you for this episode. This was a really good one for me. Like I said, it has been downloaded. It will be put on my phone, and I will be listening to it over and over and over again. And I hope you do too.
I love you. You know that.
Yeah, I love you too, David. Thanks for coming inside.
You bet.
Well, there you have it. I can't think of a better way for me to right the ship in my own life than by listening to David pinpoint a little bit about how important it is to understand that you have a divine right to be rich. This was a powerful episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please do us a favor and smash that bell. Make sure you get notified every single time we drop one of these great episodes. I'm telling you what, they are powerful, and you will learn by listening to them over and over and over again. Do us a favor. Share this with someone that can benefit from it. Please like this and do whatever you can to push this show forward. We come here for you, and we hope you enjoy it. So until the next time, please continue to listen to the Successful Mind Podcast. We'll catch you on the next one, everyone.